everybody. Or I should say, everybody. Everybody, good morning. Buenos dias. Yes, I like that. Buenos dias. Super excited to be here. Super excited to share with you guys what the Lord did in Nicaragua through our wonderful missionary team. Just real quick, we were able to build 5 houses. We beat the record, all right? Used to be 3, now it's 5, plus 2 latrines. But there's a lot more that I do want to share, but I want to let the team share. So I won't speak too much right now. Just want to say thank you so much, Crossroads, for your love, for your generosity, for sending us, for praying for us, for giving towards the big gift. We are truly making a huge impact, not only here in the U.S., but in Nicaragua. And just want to say thank you so much. Now, I want you to hear from our team, but before that, enjoy this video.
Join our team as we go serve in Nicaragua. Starting with the welcome party. Then some Sunday service worship.
And women's ministry, where we learn the value of women through Esther and how to scavenger hunt.
Where a woman brought a boulder.
Then to the biggest turnout of women.
All while the children's ministry was learning growth through David and Goliath and learning a new worship dance. We prayed and did crafts and rushed to go hit a piñata.
While the men learned that real men go to church and pray together and enjoy meals and fellowship with one another, while also inviting other men to be part of the church.
We also went out to invite people to church and prayed for their families in the community. We shared God's love.
We packed food and hygiene bags.
We worshiped and shared what we learned that day.
We moved furniture into the newly built houses.
And lastly, we prayed over the families in their new homes.
This is Virginia. We asked Virginia what this home meant to her and her family. This is what she had to say.
Ay, no tengo palabras.
I have no words.
Estoy emocionada.
I'm very excited.
Doy mil gracias al Señor y le pido que los siga bendiciendo a los que participaron.
I'm thankful to the Lord, and I ask the Lord to keep blessing everyone who participated in this. I'm very thankful.
No podía ni asistir mucho a la iglesia porque no podíamos dejar solos, porque ya nos habían robado.
We couldn't go to church much because we couldn't leave the house by itself because we had been robbed before.
Y me temíamos por lo poquito que teníamos, entonces si iban mis hijos no iba yo a la iglesia.
So if my kids went to church, I wouldn't go, and vice versa.
Ahora ya estamos un poquito más seguros, ya vamos todos a la iglesia.
Now we're a little safer now, and we're all gonna go to church.
Hello, or hola. That's as much Spanish as I know. Don't test me on anything else. Hi, my name's Georgia. You may recognize me sometimes. I'm usually in that chair. Hello. And I'm usually not one for speeches. I'm terrible at it. And I try writing down my ideas. I know I'm not going to look at this phone at all. But I could try. I had an amazing time in Nicaragua, even though at the beginning I didn't want to go. I was offered by my young adults leader, Daniel, hey, there's a spot open. Do you want to go to Nicaragua? I said, let me pray about it. So I prayed about it for a little bit, and I eventually told him no. But at that moment, I'm like, oh, I feel God tugging on me. I don't know why. So I text him back later. Fine, I'll go. I don't know what God's doing or what he's going to teach me, but I went. Through the long plane rides, stuck at the airport, whatever the journey was to get there, we finally arrived. I still had no idea what God was going to do. So I just went along with it. They said, oh, we're going to go door to door. Let's go door to door. I loved every second of it. I'm so used to, whenever I say even the word, name Jesus, I met with shut doors, just people who just don't want to listen to me, closed ears, closed hearts, and want me to go away. But with this community, they were so welcome. I don't think anyone turned us away. And in fact, they brought out chairs and said, let's talk. Even if they didn't believe in Jesus, they said, let's talk. And we're just so nice. Nicest people ever. And then later, we got to go, and I was involved with women's ministry. And that, I loved it, through talking about how a woman is valued and loved. And just to see and meet all of the faces there, and I may not know any Spanish. I do not know any Spanish at all. Like, I can't get around. But I know sign language, and I know gestures too. So I don't know if any of the pictures will show up. I didn't know how to communicate with any of the young children when they would come up to me. I knew that they knew the word yellow. They immediately pointed that out, and I love that. But I'm like, there's a little wave or something that I love doing. And by the end, no one warned me, which I wish I got a little bit of warning, how hard it would be to leave and say goodbyes. But every single little kid, and even the women, were just doing their little wave, and I love it, and I hope they'll still remember it when I see them again. But in women's ministry, we got to go through Esther and through a bunch of different verses talking about women and strength and sharing our testimonies. And I got to share mine as well. And it was just such a beautiful time to just this, I could see them just fully attentive, listening, really digesting the word. And I loved it. And then after, we got to have some fun and did some crafts. We did bracelets for one. This one says Lorena and Georgina. So my name is Georgia. It's spelled with J's. It's really weird. But over there, I like to be called Georgina. Because in Spanish, if it's letter for letter, I get Jorge. No thanks. I choose Georgina. Thank you very much. or JJ for that fact. Just anything but my actual name. But it was a lot of fun. And this one woman who only had enough time to make one bracelet, she decided to make one and give it to me. And it was so sweet. Just these little acts show how sweet their hearts are and how open they are. And I loved every moment of it. Not only seeing the growth in the community, but also, I lied, I'm looking at my phone now, seeing growth in the team as well. People that sometimes I pass through church and I have no idea who they are. But I had the pleasure of getting to know them and know their names and now have inside jokes with them and just had so much fun with them because every night we get to go in this circle and share about our day, and I absolutely loved it. And this brings me to why God brought me into this trip. Throughout my life, I've always struggled with depression. That's always been something, and I've always find it hard. You see, I'm abusive with language at best. I should be in that chair. Always reminded of joy, what it means to be joyful. And sometimes it takes others reminding you the joy of the Lord. When it comes to those kids doing their little wave, or the women making a bracelet, or just smiling or not, I can't communicate with them. And still, I can feel so much love from them, and vice versa, where I felt like I almost got more than I gave. And I tried to give everything. But they gave even more. That's just where their hearts are, and I love it. But no one could have prepared me for the goodbye. No one could have prepared me for how tight the team would be or for this journey. But I'm so happy that I said yes and that I changed my mind and that God knew what he was doing. I loved every second of it. And I'm very thankful that God called me on this mission trip.
Hey everyone, how are y'all? Good. I'm not very good at this, by the way, so bear with me. First, I want to thank everyone for being here today, allowing us to share our story in Nicaragua. A common theme that no matter how much we gave there, kind of what she was saying, was they always gave more. And no matter how much candy we gave, we got to break a piñata. Rather than taking the piñata candy and bringing it home, they ended up giving us a piece of candy. And there was a common theme through our time there. And I'm hoping today that through our stories and stuff that we can share even more from our trip. I wanted to kind of go over a couple lessons that I learned while I was there. The first lesson I learned was perspective and how the enemy will show up when doing right. And one of the scriptures that I referenced that meant a lot to me was Philippians 4:11-12. It says, "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstance. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty." And a little bit about me, and just to kind of tell you how my story or my trip started off. I'm a business owner. I have a luxury boat charter business that's here in Hampton Roads and in 5 states. And my first morning there, I was waking up. We were getting ready to go to the church to kind of start, spreading the gospel and meeting the team and everything there. And I got a call from one of my captains that said that he wrecked the boat. And the boat, I don't know if y'all saw the boat up there, but it's a $500,000 boat that he wrecked and total lost. It cost more than my house. And this is my livelihood and, kind of everything to me at this time. And right when I was going to serve God, the enemy took that from me. That first morning I was dreading the day. I was dreading what I was going to do. I was there to serve God. And while I was there, he, basically the equivalent of this, Pastor Aaron getting news that this church was burnt down while he was gone, or your home being burned at home. That's kind of the mantra of what I was feeling that morning. And I ended up, kind of the lesson that I learned was, I had pride, I had perspective, I had all these things that the enemy was trying to get in my head while I was there to serve God. And it's sometimes you just have to give it to God and just say, that's not something I want to, I'm going to live with. That's not something I'm going to give to the enemy, and just start living towards God and leaning in. And me leaning in and such made the rest of the trip, just so wonderful. The second lesson that I wanted to go over was bad thoughts and black hole in my heart that I realized while I was there. In Mark 12:43-44, truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on. And this kid, the very first day that I was there, this little kid runs up to me within the first 5 minutes of us being there and greeting everybody. And he comes up and he says, "You want to sit with me?" And I said, "Yeah, buddy, I'll sit with you." So I go and sit with this. He was probably 6 or 7 years old, and I go and sit with him, and we're talking and stuff like that. And these thoughts started coming to my head that, this kid was there to just take from me. Like he was there he was the reason he was being so friendly and stuff was because he was there to take, from me. He's surviving, he's trying to take. And I kept having to remind myself while we were in service, I was praying, I was like, stop these intrusive thoughts from coming in. I run a business, I take money from people every day. That's what the whole point of a business is for profit. And that's how I survive, and he's just surviving in the same way. And I was thinking, maybe his father had told him to come up and, tell him to go over me and try to be friendly to me and whatnot. And it was just because I traveled the world and I'd seen all these other people and so used to people taking. And while we were there in service, about 30 minutes later, the service ends and they have an offering, like a basket. People put money into to offer. And I had pointed out his mother and his father, and I see them stand up to this offering. And this man who barely has any even clothes on, he takes the money out of his pockets. I mean, you could see the lining of his pockets. He's taken out, and he's got, I don't know, maybe a couple bucks there. And he gives everything he's got to the church that's there. And it was just such a good reminder that, you have the black holes in my heart, the thoughts that I have of, the intention, the purity of the hearts of the people there, and the authenticity of the people were so abundant. And it was a reminder of how the enemy had placed a lot of black holes in my heart. The last lesson that I wanted to share with you guys was this church and the hard road that they've chosen for planning here and the mission work they do. Verses Acts 20:35, and everything I did, I showed you by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak. Remembering the words of Lord Jesus himself said, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And I just want to take a moment to thank this church for everything they do in this community and for everything they've done, obviously in my life, but I'm sure a lot of other people's lives, and the authenticity of who everybody is here and how they take you at who you are. Normally if you see me guys running here, I'm in my bathing suit, a cut-off t-shirt, sandals, and I got half the outfit today, but they made me put this on today. But normally I almost was going to wear something nice today, and I was like, you know what, be your authentic self. And I don't know how many times I've had a friend of mine or something like that I've invited, and they gave me some BS of excuse, and they can't come or whatever because of what they're wearing and stuff like that. And I kind of want to just kind of be a symbol that God and this church they take you for who you are or where you're at. And it doesn't matter what you're wearing, it's about what's in your heart. And that was a real subtle reminder of me and something I really appreciate about this church. And the last thing I want to say is I just commend this church in so many ways. The money that you guys give, I've never seen them ask for money here. They always tell you, hey, this is what your money did. This is what you guys have done as a church through all your giving and stuff like that. And it's such a relief from all the churches I've been to see see this church and what they do and what they did in Nicaragua and they do in the lives of every people that I know and people that you guys know here. So I just want to thank you guys for showing up today, and may God bless you all.
Good morning, Crossroads. 5 years ago, at 12 years old, I went to Nicaragua for the first time. I was young, and I remember being very overwhelmed by what I saw. I was seeing poverty in a way I had never experienced before, people living with far less than what I had always considered normal. At that age, I didn't really know what to do with everything I was feeling, and it was really hard to process. I remember thinking, how is this fair? How could a child my age, without many of the things I had always taken for granted, still have such a big smile? I came home deeply affected by that trip. I was sad about what I had seen, but I also realized that I didn't yet have the understanding to see the whole picture. 5 years later, I had the privilege of returning to Nicaragua with another amazing mission team. But this time, my mindset was completely different. I was no longer seeing through the eyes of a child. I wasn't looking forward to going back because I expected Nicaragua to be different. I was looking forward to going back because God had changed me. This time, I stopped focusing on what people didn't have and started noticing what they did. My main responsibility on this trip was serving the children in VBS, which was directed by Dave and Kay. Good job, by the way. A few years ago, that would have not been something I would have chosen for myself. I had never considered myself naturally good with kids, and I certainly didn't think I had the patience for it. But God has a funny way of placing us exactly where we need to be. Every day when we stepped off the bus, the kids would come running towards us with the biggest smiles. There was almost always a little hand reaching for mine, and they were so eager to sit with us and learn from us with undivided attention. But what stood out to me the most was how freely they gave love. They didn't need to have a lot in order to give a lot, and that convicted me because I realized how often I can have everything I need and still find something to complain about. I began to see Jesus in these children. Their joy wasn't dependent on having more. They simply poured themselves into the people around them. Throughout the week, my team and I taught Bible stories, sang worship songs, made crafts, and told these children about a God who loves them. But while I thought I was going there to teach them, God was also teaching me through them. Sometimes the people you think you're going to reach are the very people God uses to reach you. There was one child in particular who became very special to me. Her name was Wilmara Martinez. I remember on the third day we were at the church. As I was walking towards the children's ministry building, Wilmara came running up to me and wrapped her arms around me. Before we entered the building, she stopped. Then she bent down and wiped the dirt from my feet. At that moment, I was reminded of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. In John chapter 13, verses 14 to 15, Jesus says, "If I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet, for I have given you an example." And suddenly I realized something. I thought I was supposed to be the one washing the feet. I thought I was the one coming to teach these children, to serve them, and to show them what it meant to follow Jesus, but Wilmara humbled me. She reminded me that I am not in control of what God wants to do through a mission trip. I may have gone there thinking I was bringing something to Nicaragua, but God showed me how much I had to receive. Wilmara taught me that God can use anyone. He has created each of us uniquely, giving us different gifts and different ways to be his hands and feet. Someone's age or circumstances do not determine whether God can use them. 5 years ago, I came home wondering how people who had so little could have so much happiness. This time I came home realizing that maybe they never needed the things I thought they were missing. Maybe I was the one who had been missing something, because I had spent so much time looking at what they didn't have that I failed to see what God had already given them. And through these children, through Wilmara, and through this entire team, God reminded me that true joy doesn't come from having more. It comes from knowing him and sharing him. And sometimes the greatest lesson God teaches you on a mission trip isn't about how you can change someone else's life. It's about how willing you are to let God change yours.
That's my baby. I didn't want to go first because nobody wants to go first, but going later, you have to sit through all of those testimonies. And now, I guess I'll have to be the first to get the tissues. Okay. Hi, I'm Melissa. As Allie said, took her to Nicaragua for the first time back in 2021. That was my first trip as well. She was 12, and it was a lot of having a child in a different country on a mission trip. And she was great, as you can see by her testimony. She took a lot from that. But this year, it being the the summer before her senior year, I decided to take her back. And there you have the testimony from that. I had been a few other times since then, and then we got this time together. And all week long, she's been saying, "Mom, did you write your testimony? Did you write your testimony?" And I said, "No, I'm just going to say stuff." And that's not true. 30 minutes before we left, I wrote stuff. So. Okay. And interesting, I didn't know the others' testimonies, and they kind of line up as far as I almost didn't go. This has been a year of unimaginable loss for my family. If you can imagine Quentin Tarantino directing the book of Job, that's kind of what we've been walking through. And right in the middle of that, right as I was returning to the US from living in another country, I filled out my application to go to Nicaragua, like a crazy person. I fully expected Paul to take my hand, look me in the eyes, and say, "Hey, sister, maybe let's get you put back together first. Your head might not really be in the game." But he didn't. He welcomed us with open arms. This was also the first time that I really wasn't in the financial position to just pay for the bulk of the trip myself. And I expected Paul to remind me of that too. Instead, he answered the way he always does, "Let's pray about it." And so I prayed, and somehow it came together. Then 2 days before we were supposed to leave, I had yet another crisis. I called Paul because I needed someone to minister to me. And instead of telling me that I shouldn't go, he immediately started coordinating things that needed to happen to at least take my daughter so that I could stay home and handle things. And in coordinating that, it hit me. I recognize what's happening here. I recognize the systematic series of distractions. Distractions that are trying to keep me from doing something that God had called me to do. So I went, and you get to hear about the proof of all the good things that were done there, seeing the videos and the slideshows. They speak for themselves. So I'm not going to share a specific story from Nicaragua. I'm going to talk about before I left, during training and preparation, something weird happened. I've always been all in with serving with kids. I love kids. That's where I'm comfortable. In one of the trainings, someone said, "Who wants to volunteer to lead women's ministry?" And all of a sudden, I look up, and there's my hand in the air. And I thought, well, I guess that's what happens when you let the Holy Spirit lead. So I spent the next few weeks preparing those lessons for women. I cried through almost every single one. I realized that the lessons I was preparing for were things that God wanted to teach me. The prayers that I was writing for them were prayers that I needed, and the reminders that I were giving them were reminders that I needed. And God used the preparation to strengthen me before I got on the plane. When I got to Nicaragua, the group of women that were with me to help serve in women's ministry, they had never served in women's ministry either. So there were a lot of blank stares at each other, a lot of, what are we doing? I don't know, what are you doing? And a lot of laughter. And a couple of days into it, I finally confessed to the women who I was leading that I did not feel qualified for this. And as I said it to them, I realized immediately that that was a lie. It was the truth, but it was a lie, that I was not qualified. I had been confusing being unqualified with being uncomfortable. And so I pivoted the message, and I tried to use that to empower the women there. As mentioned, we talked about Esther for such a time as this, very fitting. We talked about women throughout Scripture that God used in extraordinary ways. Mary, just Mary, called to be the mother of Jesus. The theme became God uses ordinary people when they're willing to say yes. And in that, I come back to Job in my life and also in the conditions of Nicaragua. Job never got answers to the questions that we all want answered when we suffer, and that's why. But his life became a testimony anyway. And I think that's one of the things God has been teaching me this year, and I'm thankful to have been able to take my pain to Nicaragua. The main points I have are, we don't have to wait until the storm is over to testify about God. And this goes for us and the people there. They hold this so true. We don't have to wait until we understand everything. We don't have to wait until our lives are cleaned up, circumstances are better, or we feel stronger. Sometimes our testimony is simply, I'm still here. I'm still trusting God, and I'm still saying yes. And you can see this lived out in the people of Nicaragua. One of my favorite things in being there many times and forming relationships with the people that we help and witness to, they don't find their joy in the things that we give them. They don't really find their true joy in the houses that we build, although obviously those are critical. They find their joy in serving the Lord, who they know to trust for their provisions. When we go door to door, many of them go with us now. That is a sight to see. That is really a sight to see. They let us know who needs prayer and why, who's been missing church and maybe needs a little nudge. They are in it to advance the kingdom with us. Jesus tells us in Matthew 28:19, go therefore and make disciples. That's the whole point, right? That's the whole mission. Once I heard a pastor explain that idea could be understood as, instead of therefore go, as you go. And I love that. So the people that we reach in Nicaragua who become Christians, they end up being our strongest models of that. As you go, make disciples is the command. And the people who learn of Christ in Nicaragua understand that we cannot wait for the perfect opportunity. They don't even get that option. We work for the kingdom. As you go about your ordinary life, you can make disciples. As you go through suffering, you can point people to Jesus. As you go through uncertainty, you can trust him. As you go through your own storm, you can still be his hands and feet. We do not have to wait to become some version of qualified and what that looks like to us. If God has called you, he will equip you.
Hello, my name is Tiffany, and this was my 6th trip to Nicaragua. For the last 3 years, I've been photographing the trips. That's the pictures behind you. It's been such an honor and a blessing to be able to use my gifts, and it's truly become the reason I go so that I can bring it back to all of you. I have some notes because I don't want to ramble because I could talk about this for hours. So they said I only have 5 minutes. So some of the things on this trip that stood out the most to me, and I think it's probably been like this every time, but this time it stood out a lot, were the relationships. And I think that that's something that we have here at Crossroads. We all recognize each other. We give each other hugs. Miss Jenny gets us every week before we come in with the big hug. And We had that in Nicaragua as well. When we got to church on Sunday, there was a line of like a dozen women that would just squeeze you as soon as you walked in. And it reminded me of being here. And the people there are just so invested in Crossroads, just the way that we're invested in them, that they pray for you guys and they tell us thank you for Crossroads. That's why I got it on the video where they said gracias Crossroads, because that's something that they actually say when we're there. It's not just a staged thing. Some things that happen for me personally are I have a different perspective on the trip because my job is kind of like a reporter. So I want to be everywhere and capture everything so that all of you can see it and so that the team has that memory. But what ends up happening is I keep all my emotions locked in, and then when I start processing the photos, it all comes out. That happened again this year. I can hardly watch it when they're up here talking because it just gets me. And this time instead of just crying through it, I thought, why? Why am I doing this? Why am I crying every time I see these pictures? And it's because the pictures, they do tell this story, but they don't capture it all. The things that you can't see in the pictures are the smiles, the hugs, the tears. You can see it, but you can't feel the emotions that you feel when you're there. You can't feel the sun beating on you and the rain and the wind when it comes. You can't feel how tight they hold you when they hug you. I mean, these people love us so much, and it's not because we're there to help them. They just truly love other people. It's an amazing thing to experience, and it's hard to put into words. And so the goal is to tell the story without the words so that all of you at home can see what it's like on these trips, but they still just don't tell it all. They are wonderful, but there's so much you can't see. And God is really moving in this community, just like he's moving in Crossroads. He's powerful, all-encompassing, overwhelming love is here for all of us, and we are never too far. With relationships in mind, I have a note to share with you from a woman in Nicaragua. You'll have seen her in the pictures. She was wearing purple and helping the men with construction. She had a shovel in her hand. Sylvia, yes, Gina, she is the hardest working woman you'll ever meet. She mixes concrete faster than the men. She's strong, extremely helpful, and Sylvia is always out there helping with construction, keeping up with the men, and a lot of times outpacing them. This year was a little bit different. She's also caring for her nephew, who's around 1 year old, just turned 1 recently. His mother goes to work and she watches the baby. And so she just takes him around in the stroller to all the construction sites, and she'll be shoveling and mixing concrete and working really hard. I mean, she's like really in it. And then you see her look up and she'll go, and she'll like make little baby faces across the way because her nephew is across the way, like out of the danger zone, so to speak. And she just starts flirting with him. And I thought it was so cool to see that this year because she's always been like a masculine kind of woman. And this year we got to see the feminine side in her as well. Many people here know her and she feels like part of the family. And so she sent this message. She said, Crossroads, all the brothers and sisters of the church, I hope everyone is well, and also that your families are well. I want to thank you ahead of time for your prayers for me and my family. I love you all very much, and I hope to see you soon. And this note is just an example of the relationships that I'm talking about. She genuinely loves Crossroads. It's not just those that have been there to see her. She really prays for all of us and loves us. So I just wanted to share all of that with you, to thank you for all that you do to support Nicaragua. I know many of you in the room contribute financially, and a lot of you pray. So even if you can't go, those things really matter, and they make such a difference. I hope the photos show what we did there, and that's all I have to say because Ariana's coming up, so I'm at my time.